Hey everyone, it's the Hey Poopy Podcast, What That Booty Do from Poop to Pleasure to Health, hosted by me, Dave.
And me, Ellen. We are two curious people who are removing the stigma from your stinker. And why are we doing this? Because we love laughing and learning about butts and helping them to be the best that they can be. And on this week's episode, we have Shawn Shafner, who is a part of the Poop Project, and he's come out with a brand new book that I personally love.
It's called Know Your Shit, What Your Crap Is Telling You. It's like little funny bathroom books, health books. It's all like kind of under the funny gifts. It's actually kind of healthy. It's informative, really funny, great illustrations, and just a plethora of poop knowledge.
Yeah, it's like a kid's book with swearing. So if you like potty humor like we do, you're going to love it. And yes. Shawn, because he's been working on the Poop Project for over 12 years, he has a vast amount of knowledge, more than Dave and I could ever even imagine. So we've learned so much from him. Like in this clip.
Maybe I need to get my prostate checked. Like maybe I'm not fully emptying my bladder. This is a partially hypochondriac fear. And I bought some adult diapers so that I could wear them to give myself some comfort, and also engaged in a sort of social experiment of like, now I've got these adult diapers, like, could I just pee anywhere? But then I was home and a roommate was using the toilet and I really had to go. I had to poo, and I put on the diaper and I pooped in the diaper.
Wow.
And I love that.
It was kind of amazing because it was a home safe environment, and pooping in the diaper, it taught me really how poop is heavy, like that weight in the diaper. Like I'm not normally wearing an automatic scale device, but I could really feel there the bulk that we talk about when we're talking about a bulky stool.
Sure.
Yeah, that's my story. I'm sticking to it. Don't ask for it again.
I think you're our very first guest who shit in a diaper and is here to tell us.
Really?
So thank
you. Shawn is a bank of information, especially about poop, and you're going to love that book. I mean, you can get it on Amazon. Just type in Know Your Shit. You will find all the information there and buy that book. This guy's an amazing person, a great artist. I mean, he does everything. I mean, pretty much. He's like a jack of all trades and a true Renaissance man.
He's leading the poo renaissance like the rest of us, like Dave and me.
Yeah.
And do you want to know more about Hey Poopy Podcast? Well, go to our website, heypoopypodcast.com, and you can learn so much more. Also, did you know we're in Hump Fest? Check it out. I'll put a banner on the website so you can buy tickets, which is starting in, I think, late January this week. Hump Fest is touring in 30 cities around the country. And we got one of our Hey Poopy cartoons in there, Matt Stildo.
Yeah.
So check that out.
Yeah, check out the websites, what I guess tour dates are available in your city, and go support. It's a real fun festival if you've never been, and we're obviously super excited because our stuff's in there. So please go check it out and support.
And we're going to be there for the Brooklyn event, so check that out.
Yes, and without further ado, on to the shit show.
Are you soft as a panda, yet strong as a bear?
Bamboo is redefining toilet paper for the future, being more sustainable using bamboo fibers that grow 16 times faster than hardwood.
Bamboo is soft to the touch, yet strong, so use less TP with each wipe.
Septic safe, unbleached, and unscented for all those delicate parts.
And get 10% off with our promo code HeyPoopy at GoBamboo.com.
Go Bamboo, spelled GOBUMBOO.
We give a sheet about our future. You should too with Bamboo.
Hey Poopy, how you doing? Hey Poopy, how you doing?
I'm just, trying to find a place with like-minded people to talk about like-minded things about me, about poop and stuff.
Hey Poopy, how you doing? Hey Poopy, how you doing?
Oh man, what's this right here? Is this a podcast about poop?
It's your one-stop shop for poop.
And much, much more. Hey, everybody, it's the Hey Poopy Podcast with
Dave.
And Ellen, and this is episode 152, but it will always be number 2 to us, our favorite number. And we have a very special guest on the show today. We have Shawn from the Poop Project.
Yes, welcome.
No, thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me. I'm a longtime fan, first time speaker on the program.
Well, we
like
love
talking
that.
to, like my news anchors or something.
Yeah.
You guys are real. You eat at the Arby's too? Wow.
That's awesome. Oh, that's so
We
great.
all poop together. And Shawn, before we go into what you do, we'd like to know how you poo. How have you been pooping recently?
Yeah, thank you for asking. I would say that I've had my standard like 3 a.m. dump so far. I mean, now it's late evening. Yeah, I feel like I tend to have a first like, oh, that's a fair amount, and then like the secondary, and then there's sometimes a tertiary. Could have been 4 today. I'm not really sure. And then it may be that I'll still have a hearty log still today, mostly vegetarian diet. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
Awesome.
Yeah, I can't say they're always a 3 or 4. Sometimes we're a little more on the 5-6 Bristol, but pack it
In the
in.
caboose.
Sometimes.
Yeah, I'm usually a 5, and I've gone. Yeah, I'm like I live in that world.
It's very, a little Benefiber and some flaxseed never hurt anybody, right? Yeah. How about you all?
Dave?
I'll go first. I pooped twice today, I think. Yeah, early this morning, and then like this afternoon, like early afternoon, and again like 4.5, 5s, somewhere in that range. But the real news I have.
Ooh.
Hold on for a second. I have to get my thing ready. Okay, so Sunday. Oh my God, this is awful. I completely shit my pants Sunday. Yeah, it hasn't happened in a long time. It was an unfortunate accident, I should say. We were up in Terrytown visiting some really close friends. We had this amazing dinner at this awesome place. Shout out to this place, Goose Feathers. If you're up there, the food is out of control. But anyway,
your story, Dave. I'm not sure if this is a shout out.
Well, I know. Well, that aside, the food was fantastic.
Okay.
But anyway, I had to. It was so fucking good. But it was like a family style. We just got a bunch of plates, and then because the guy the manager that night thought my friend was someone else who owned a coffee shop, they gave us another plate of food for free. It was like just so much food. It was 4 of us. It wasn't like super crazy. And when I left, I was like, my stomach kind of feels a little weird, but I'm like, I should be fine. Hop back on the Metro North, or the train back to New York. It's like express. We're heading there. And I went to go to the bathroom. No toilet paper.
The train?
Yeah, I was like, I have to go. And my wife's like, oh my God, let's go to the bathroom. I'm like, yeah, no problem. I go into the little stall. There's no toilet paper. And then I go to walk to the other car to go. And then it's like this weird emergency door that I couldn't open. So I'm like, oh my God. So I go back. She's like, here's some napkins and a mask. And I was like, that's not going to do anything. It was like there was so little material to use. I'm like, that's not going to do anything. So I'm like, I'll just hold it. Everything was, okay. Get all the way into the city, get Grand Central, get to the train. And then there was an incident on the train where they kicked us off. And then so we were like one stop from the C train. That's our train. And we were waiting there, and I'm sitting going like, okay, now this is getting kind of a little hectic. We go one stop, and I was like, I can't do this anymore. Like I couldn't hold it, so I'm like, let me find a bathroom. And we're, of course, again, this is the problem with the city. There's no public bathrooms. The public bathrooms I went to were closed because of COVID. It's a giant sign. It's like, sorry, but shit out of luck. And I had to climb these crazy ass stairs. And the second I turned the corner, it just I unleashed. So I climbed up this, and now I'm just like, it's just a mess. And I'm not dressed up, but I'm like, I have a nice outfit on, and I'm walking up the stairs. I go outside, we find some random bar. I go inside this bar, and I mean, I'm on the verge of it's like so much depression. I'm just like, this is the worst. I'll tell my wife, I'm like, just go home. She's like, I'm not going to leave you. So she waits outside. I go in this bar.
Good on her. That keeps this woman.
We've been married for a long time. So I go down these stairs, more stairs, and it's it's a mess. Thankfully, I had some boxer briefs on that kind of kept everything in there. But by the time I got to
ask, is it dripping?
Oh, it's a mess. It's like these people that talk about they have a log, like a healthy log in their pants. I'm like, I don't know what that doesn't happen to me. It's just it's liquid. It's just awful. So I go over to the bathroom. Now at this point, I'm like completely defeated. I go open the door. This guy's like, "Oh, give me a second. I'm just cleaning out the bathroom." So I'm just waiting there more, just sitting in just stewing in my shit. And I finally go to the bathroom, and it's just like, I had to I'm not the most flexible person, so I'm like, I'd sit down, I look at the results, and it's not good. Like the underwear is like filled with shit, and I'm losing my mind. I'm like, okay, how do I do this? I had to take my pants, take one leg off, take my shoe off, then pop my leg off the pants, then take one leg out, then go back and then do the same thing. Well, all sitting, I'm doing this, by the way. Take the underwear, and luckily there was a garbage bin right next to the toilet. I just buried it underneath. I felt awful, but I'm like, I don't know what to do at this point. Then I put my stuff back on, and then I just sat there forever trying to clean myself up. And of course, there's no bidet or anything, so it's just it's a mess. And then my pants now I'm just freeballing it. Pants are completely a little wet, and I'm just sitting there going I have to walk. And I just walked past the bar. I mean, I felt I didn't buy anything, didn't get anything to drink. I just went upstairs. My wife's like, "How's it going?" I'm like, "Not good." And then I just walked to the train and just in complete silence until we got home, and I just went into the shower and just scorching hot, just cleaned myself for what seemed like an hour, but it just took forever. And then I brought a bag with me into the bathroom, took my pants, put them in the bag. They were ruined, absolutely destroyed. And I just sat there and silently not in cry, but inner crying. And then I think I had some tea and went to bed, just defeated. But it was a disaster. I must have been walking around those shitty pants for at least 20, 30 minutes. Oh, yeah.
Thank you for sharing this, Dave. I feel like I want to say I love you, and
thank you.
You're just utter humanity in this moment. Because that's yeah. No,
it was awful. It's one of those things where you're just and I remember thinking, I am too old to be shitting my pants. And my wife's like, you should have just gone to the. I'm like, next time just go. You should have just gone into the bathroom of the train. I'm like, I should have, but I'm like, it still would have been a mess. It would have been less of a mess if you. I'm like, true, but I'm like, I was a little arrogant. I thought I could hold that in, but for an hour that just wasn't happening. So I was close. I was close. I was so close.
Yeah.
But
also, Dave, thank you. Thank you for bringing it.
Yeah, Ellen, what you got, huh? You got to tell how's you got some to.
Ellen usually has the epic. Her check-ins are usually epic. So mine are mine. I took a shit today. It was easy.
Well, Dave works from home. I do too, but I feel like I leave the house a little bit more than Dave does. So I feel like his digestive tract is much faster than mine. So he's used to being so close to the toilet. But I need to ask some follow-up questions.
Please.
One, what do you think that you ate that made, was it fried something?
No, I think
something?
I think it was a culmination of the food, all the food we ate that night. And some of it was kind of rich, it was this. I had this crab fried rice. I never eat crab fried rice. It was this gourmet crab fried rice that had a fish roe on it. It was caviar basically. It was unbelievably good. Wow. I just think all that stuff. And then my friends were my friend he hates dessert. So you gotta try this dessert. I'm like, I don't know, man. I'm kind of full. And we all just shared a little bit of the dessert. And I'm like, oh my God. I think it was that, and the holidays, eating crappier than I normally eat. And I think it was just a culmination of the end of the holiday. This is basically the day after. It was Sunday, so it was a couple days after New Year's, a day after New Year's. So it was just basically I think all that compounded, and then I got that twinge, and it just went from there. But I think it was all the rich food and just drinking. I was drinking a lot, and yeah.
Number 2, I think from here on in, if you have a meal like that, you have to go straight to your friend's house. Do not pass go. Do not collect $200.
Oh, yeah.
I know your bowels very well for 3 years of doing this podcast. And I would just look at that meal and be like, maybe we should have brought you a diaper, darling.
Yeah. Well, I realized I was like so arrogant. I didn't bring like I didn't bring my any kind of kit, any to go, like my stuff. So
I just gifted you a kit for Christmas.
Oh, completely. Didn't even think to bring you that. Like, it just didn't even like cross my mind. Like, I'm leaving the house, I might shit my pants. And now I'm like, I have to rethink my whole strategy for everything in life. But it was seriously
caring.
like, it was one of those things where I was just so, for 2 days, I was just like, I couldn't let it go. I'm like, this is the worst thing. It was awful. You know, it feels better to let it go. my bowels
I've said before, shame thrives when it's alone. So here's a place to celebrate it.
Yeah, you got to compost it, you know, and transform it. William Ian Miller writes in The Anatomy of Disgust that the counterpoint to disgust is love, you know, and it's in that way where like you're on the subway and someone is vomiting or shitting their pants or whatever, and they're a stranger, and you're like, oh, like, why are you here? Why are you fouling our space with your body fluids? You know, but that person is your daughter, your lover, your mother, your father, whatever. And, you know, suddenly there's a like, oh, sweetie, oh my gosh, how can I help you?
Oh my
right?
God.
I mean, yeah, for so many of us, like we are going to be shitting our pants at some point. And, you know, and diapers are the other large market for diapers are those in their older age, you know, so the idea that our bowels are just always going to be constantly sealed is
completely. I mean, there were two things I forgot to mention too. I mean, my wife goes, because where this all went down, it was like at Fulton Street in the city, and where the Oculus is. For those listening home, what that is, it's like this big stop where the World Trade Center used to be, like, area, and it's like this whole like fancy little area. A lot of tourists, a lot of action goes through this particular station, and this is where it was all happening. So it was like homeless people everywhere. My wife's like, maybe you should just like shit in the ground. I'm like, I can't do it. I was like, dude, there's so many cameras and like just people. Like, it was nuts. And then like after all this happened, she was like, let me know when we can laugh about this. I thought that was so funny.
As I've always said before, also, love is not romance. Love is helping your partner clean up their shitty drawers. You know,
I mean, luckily she
that's
didn't have to,
real love.
Luckily, she didn't have to experience that. But yeah, she was there for she was holding my hand, if you will, metaphorically. Yeah, she was there for support. Yeah. Ooh, so yeah, that happened. And I lost
my story. I don't have a good story. My story is boring as fuck. So the only thing I have to say for my check-in is I pooped today. It was like a Bristol 2, not great. I woke up early to go to the doctor's, and I was wondering if I'd even poop at the doctor's because I woke up so early and pounded coffee before I went. But the only exciting check-in part that I have is a friend of ours is going to be babysitting my pets when I go out of town. Her name's Scooter Pie, and she came to my apartment last week too. I could show her the ropes and introduce the pets and blah blah blah. And she was like, "Can I use your bathroom?" And I was like, "Yeah, no problem." And she comes out of the bathroom and she's like, "I feel like I just peed on a celebrity's toilet." And I was like. And it took me a second. I was like, how am I a celebrity? And I was like, oh, she listens to the podcast. Wow. Okay. And I was like, yeah, I do have a lot of fancy. I have my bidet. I have my stool. I have my automatic toilet cleaner. I have the light in the bowl. Like, my toilet is like a spaceship when it comes to, So
it's extraterrestrial.
Yeah. So I was like, wow, I'm famous for this. My toilet is famous.
That's so funny.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's like a role. It's like a role reversal here, because usually it's like the complete opposite. Like, I'm just like, yeah, I took a shit today. There's nothing really to write home about. But unfortunately, I shit my pants.
Bravo, Dave. Bravo.
Yeah, you were ready for that.
Oh yeah, I had the whole sound effect where I was like, this is going down.
I officially think, Dave, that you have shit your pants more than I have when it comes to stories on this show. So 2022, here you come. I gotta make it happen.
That was another thing. I'm like, well, the year just started, and this is what we're starting with, huh? Okay.
Can only go.
Only go up. Exactly.
Yeah.
It can only go up from there. Oh my God, I hope so.
I'm going to Mexico next week, so maybe I'll get Montezuma's revenge. And woo!
That's gonna be.
We're in Mexico.
Cozumel.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, an island. So yeah, let's see. I'll drink some water for you, Dave. Whoop,
Yeah.
whoop.
Bring some anti-diarrhea stuff just in case.
Oh, I always do.
I've been
I
to
always
Mexico.
keep stuff like that.
I've been to Mexico 4 times now, or 3 or 4 times, and I've only gotten like, the revenge maybe like once. The last day of
It's
my last
definitely-
trip. Yeah.
It's not a requirement of travel, the Montezuma's Revenge, the Delhi Belly. Like, if you're wise about what you eat and what you don't eat, you can definitely limit your chances.
Yeah. You can navigate it pretty well.
Yeah, and I always think it's important to remember that, like, when people come to this country, they also experience diarrhea, traveler's diarrhea, and we experience it in Terrytown sometimes.
Oh, yeah.
And all the way from Terrytown back.
Oh, I was so pissed. I just, those were really good pairs of underwear I just lost too. I was like, fuck.
Yeah.
You can always buy new ones.
The only weird place that I remember getting, I mean, I've had plenty of diarrhea on trips, but like sick almost the entire time was weirdly in Italy. Like,
Oh, yeah. I remember that story.
and I don't know. Yeah. Just constant. And I was dating somebody and I was trying to be romantic, but then I get up and go to his bathroom and blow it. And I came back to bed and he was like, I can smell that. And I was like,
He's pretending to be asleep. He's like,
Yeah,
like,
that's not a
sorry.
gentleman.
yeah, that's why we stopped dating.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh, man.
Yeah, I would go back to that love thing. It's like, if your partner can't handle the sound of your farts, then it's not going to work. And I believe there's studies on this, that
totally.
show that when partners can talk about their poop habits together. In fact, I even think the term how are you doing or how's it going has its etymological origins in asking about one's bathroom practices. It's definitely a litmus test of our emotional and physical well-being.
I think we did an
100%.
article about that, a news thing about like couples that, talk about can fart in front of each other, like stay together longer and like, or a healthier relationship. So there's definitely truth to that.
So, Shawn, let's go into what you do besides your poo. Even though you have the Poop Project, you are King Poop. And Poop is also an acronym for People's Own Organic Power, which I love that you did that. But tell our audience a little bit more.
Yeah, sure. Well, the Poop Project uses arts and education to stimulate creative conversation about sustainable sanitation for the person, planet, and global community. Basically, that means we normalize the do that everybody does and get people talking about it. That we have all these innovative technologies, we have rich conversations, ways to see our humanity better, recycle our nutrients better, help people all over the world who need access to systems that can process their poo in ways that are regenerative and not adding to their sickness and sometimes death. But we can't do any of that if we can't talk about poo. So I sort of see that as the Poop Project's role as like a cultural catalyst, we have a documentary called Flush. There are a number of solo shows I've done over the years. There's a kids show. There's a new book coming out called Know Your Shit. I forget all the things I've done because
you did a lot.
So many of them. We had a podcast for 3 years called Shit and Shame with Shawn. Yeah, so I'm pooped, you could say, from doing all this poop work. And in the meantime, I
think I found out about you through Kim from Flush.
Yeah.
We've been following you on social media for a while now. And then I don't remember why I reached out, but I was like, I think you should be on the show. And you were like, I have a book coming out. And I was like, yes, perfect. Let's talk about it.
Yes. Great timing. And with the book, it's very exciting. One of those, it was a very kind of lucky break actually, where the publisher approached me and said, we want to make a fun bathroom book and we really like what you do. And if you want to make it sort of the Poop Project manifesto, then you can. So it's essentially introduces, rather than the Bristol, or in addition to the Bristol stool chart, a simpler, what I call the Goldie-Plops model of like, is it too dry? Is it too wet? Or is it just right in the Goldie-Plop zone? With advice about how to keep yourself in the Goldie-Plop zone while also really expanding on some of what has kept me invested in this world and actually such big fans of yours. And, that like there is so much cool stuff that we can do to trip out our personal bathrooms, but also to really shift the way we relate to this most basic product that comes out of all of us, it right there in the name, right? It's the people's own organic power, and it leads the pathway towards a regenerative kind of bottom up society that, even to bring in some of the other things we've talked about, like people who lack access to housing. If we design a city that works for them, it's probably going to work better for all of us, So I think I feel like I'm going all over the place, and that's because for me, shit does open up into all these different spokes of a wheel that are kind of philosophical about what poop teaches us about how everything composts and changes, about acknowledging taboos in our society, that if we don't talk about the problems that we have in our relationships, in our climate issues, in our politics, whatever, then those things rot. But when we can work with them, they can transform towards solutions. And poop touches each one of us. It gets at the real basics of what it means to be human and how to create a world that's hospitable to that reality of our human experience and all that it is. And I think that's powerful because the society we've inherited, which is largely along a sort of Victorian, shameful trajectory, teaches us or reinforces an idea that poop doesn't exist, that our bodies are immaculate. We put on our clothes, we leave our homes, and, we go to these back spaces where something very secret happens that we cover up with smell, that like your story, Ellen, that someone should deign to say, that smells. Like, yeah, I know, it smells. Yeah. This is actually something we all know. So
not shocking.
What's the issue? But that real tension between living in a world that pretends we don't poop and the reality of having that pooping body, I think really prevents us from loving ourselves in the deepest way possible. So essentially that's like what the book and kind of my brand is about, is like, how do we love ourselves better?
We're on social media taking pictures of our food. Why? I mean, I'm not asking for pictures of people's poop, but like, why can't we talk about where that food ends up going, and how it is a universal part of everybody's life. When Dave and I started this podcast 3 years ago, people were like, how many episodes can you do about people pooping? And I'm like, how many people have buttholes and make poop? So, I mean, like the stories are never ending, and it has like snowballed into so much more because the butthole does so much. But yeah, I want to go back to why we have you on the show, because your book is coming out. And I think by the time this episode is airing, people can get a hold of your book. It's called Know Your Shit. And I loved it. I am
very thorough.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm dyslexic as fuck, and I am the slowest reader in the world. And it's an easy, fun, adorable read. And I actually learned so much stuff that I was like, oh, don't I know enough about poop? No, there's never. I can always learn more.
Yeah, no,
it's
and like
a very rich pile.
Completely. And the way you approach certain topics, I thought it was very hands-on, but like it did come from a loving space where you can kind of see where, how your mind works in the sense of like combining all these things into the world. And the fact that it has to deal with poop, and again, like you said, echoing what you mentioned about how people just pretend like it doesn't really happen. And I think the book does a really fun way of like making it approachable. You get information, and then also things that you can do to help, improve yourself mentally and physically.
Thank you. Wow. I mean, this is the first interview I've gotten to do about the book. It comes out February 15th at stores near you.
Yes.
So it's exciting to get to be able to talk about it and hear people's feedback real, because as you know, as artists and also as a theater artist myself, who does work that's not poop involved. Also, you never know what you really have until people read it. I mean, which is like shit in a way too. We think a meal really worked for us, and then your poop is like, yeah, you thought so, didn't you? Sometimes it's a
nice try.
Yeah, exactly. And and just to your story, Dave, like it's really hard for all of us we live in a world that is very mouth focused, very consumer focused, very experience focused. I'd say as a meditation teacher also that's one of my frames, that we're often that we have that craving to get away from bad stuff and to go towards good stuff, or as I'd say in my show, Assume the Throne, like we run towards being the shit and we run away from feeling like shit. We run towards experiences that are the shit. We run away from experiences that feel like shit. But there's always some balance in the middle. And we have so many delectable things to eat. It's easy to forget what's going to happen at the end. And I think for all of us to really listen to that feedback about what's coming out of our butts in terms of how we adjust our own health. I think there are many things I talk about in the book that like I'm not always able to do. And I grew up as a self-constipating kid, who wanted everything to be perfect and clogged a lot of toilets. So I think that has also, lent itself to my understanding of both the shame that can come with poop and around poop, because I experienced a lot of that as a kid, clogging those toilets, and also the liberation and that sort of constant wrestle that even as the self-proclaimed Poo-Ru, which is a title I'm kind of retiring because it feels like maybe it's not super sensitive.
Poo-Ru, I loved it. I was like, when I saw that on the site, I was like, Poo-Ru, yes.
You'd be surprised. I have a lot of like, Para? What does it say? I don't understand. But there are still bathrooms I walk into and go like, I'm not always going to poop on every train. Like our wrestle. It's a wrestle to have this body, to have an excremental experience is a wrestle. It's never something we transcend.
Yeah, completely.
The book I feel like is like a children's book for adults because it has swearing, but it also has cute cartoons. And you're an artist. You drew the cartoons yourself?
No, thank you for asking. And I meant to shout out our wonderful illustrator, Rebecca Pry. And I should also shout out Cider Mill Press that published it, and Simon & Schuster, who's distributing it.
Oh, excellent.
And my editor, Buzz Poole, who's the other big person who's been able to give feedback on it. Yeah, I just wanted to write something that was like super easy to understand, And again, I think it's part of the challenge around shit is so often, and part of the field I think you all are part of forging as well, and recent books like Chelsea Wald's Pipe Dreams, and I'm looking at The Other Dark Matter by Lena Zeldovich that I'm leading a book club for on Thursday with Kim Worsham from Flush and
great.
Rich Earth Institute in Vermont. And we need a vernacular of poop, right? Like Harvard linguist Steven Pinker says or notes that in our words, there isn't a neutral conversational term for this brown stuff that comes out of our body, mostly brown, we should say. And, poop is technically a kid's word, shit's an expletive. It's like if we were to have the sex conversation, we have fucking and we have coitus, but we lack that term that could be said on the news, right? Without people giggling or some ascription of judgment or scientificism. And I think poop is, in a sense, beginning to take some of that place, and the poop emoji as our neutral word. But this is all to say that for those of us who are trying to model, it's important to model what having just like an okay, ordinary kind of person conversation about this has, with really practical advice, not pretending that buttholes aren't buttholes and poop isn't poop, and that we don't need to speak about it as if we're scientists describing animals, who are not us, right? Like this is an everyday experience. And let's talk about it in that way. Yeah.
Well, I love that you used Goldie Plops, and you've already said that term before, but I wanted to know, because I loved your book so much, would you do like a censored one for kids? Because it could, like, if you took out a couple of the swears, I feel like it would be a great book for a parent to read to a kid so they understand how their body works.
Let me get the publisher on the line and let them know you feel this way, Ellen.
I feel like you should have two versions, like the adult and the rated G one.
Yeah, I would love to. And I think it's something that, I've also pitched for years. Like, there's a colleague of mine, Kanako Katayama in Japan, who did a whole series in elementary schools of teaching them. In Japan, they have a different organization than the Bristol Stool Chart. I think there's 4 different demarcations of unchi, I believe, is unko or unchi. Clearly, I don't speak Japanese. Please don't trust me as a resource for this. But she had a whole program in schools teaching kids about this and getting them to report. And I always felt like that was a cool model of actually like early STEM education, like how do our bodies work? How do we create some early observance about what's coming in, what's coming out? And for them as well, it was part of creating a poop positive culture, that kids change their shoes when they go to the toilet, because that's just part of like Japanese hygienic culture. And so if you're gone for a long time and people see your shoes there for a while, like they know you're pooping. And just like any kid in this country, right, you come back with that embarrassment, with the like giggles as you sit back down to your desk. If you're going to poop at all, which one study shows like 2/3 of kids are not pooping in their middle school bathrooms, because who would? unless they really had to, right?
Kid and be having so much shame to that, where if I feel like it's like sex education and poop education should be something with a bunch of other things like balancing your checkbook should be something that should be part of education.
Yeah. Well, that's all part of, reshifting education away from our sort of capitalistic factory mindset and into something that actually teaches people how to be humans, which I think is another part of this that as artists, as someone who's really spent a long time rolling on floors in dance clothes and, in singing classes and all of that, I always felt like actors learn what it means to have a human instrument and what it means to utilize that. And those are also spaces in dressing rooms with other actors or dancers where that's just a thing you talk about.
Yeah.
And I think I mentioned this in the book, but when I did a tour in 2008 with a Nickelodeon show called The Backyardigans, and we were about to travel across the country and I was playing this singing penguin and we were in our first bathroom in York, Pennsylvania, in our out of town tryout where we were working out the kinks of the show. And having been a constipated kid who didn't want anyone to see this secret shameful thing that I thought happened to me, and had recovered from that as an older kid, it was really important to me on day one as I saw oh, here's this dressing room and there's the door, and on the other side of that door is where I'm gonna need to poop, right now, and sounds might come out and it's gonna smell. And so I just announced basically that to the cast. I said, I'm gonna poop, and exactly that. There might be sound, there might be smell, and that's just gonna need to be okay because we're all gonna share those spaces, and we need to feel comfortable doing that.
You announcing that though probably alleviated so many other people in that cast shame.
Yeah,
I think so. I bet you weren't the only one.
Completely. They're thinking the same exact thing. They're like, oh, how am I going to deal with this? And oh, someone broke the glass, I guess, if you will.
Yes, broke the wind. Yeah. I think it's very true. And I've definitely found, I'm sure you have too, even that story you told earlier, Ellen, of that this is inspirational to people. And there's a lot of people who are like, I could never do what you do, but and I'm very uptight, but I just want you to know that you changed my life with what you've talked about, or people coming up to me at conferences who are like, I just pooped in my hotel room, and I'm like, cool. And they're like, you don't understand. I have a roommate and they were there and I pooped, even though I barely know them, and that's never happened to me in my life. And so I think it is something that a lot of us are carrying this shame to some extent around with us in the world. And I think a lot of my hope in that way is to inspire and anchor people, honestly, to have people say why am I carrying this shame? That's fucked up. There's no reason I'm carrying this around.
Because society,
exactly. And I think too, there's a lot of fear that then creates. And I'd love to do that kids book. I'd love to do more consultancy. And I've begun doing more of that with wastewater treatment plants that want people to stop flushing wet wipes, right? New York City wants people to compost more, and similar issues around their wastewater treatment. How do we create more engagement across that, or with biosolids, right? If people asked for New York City biosolids to go back onto recycling and beneficial reuse as opposed to being landfill cover, that could happen, but it doesn't happen because people don't want to advocate for it. They don't want to pay for it. They don't even know that it's possible. And I often get a lot of oh, we love what you do, but I believe in it, but I'm just scared about what my colleagues will say, or I'm nervous about what the people above us will say. I've consulted with engineers who are like, we have the wastewater technology to create these advanced systems. And then we pitch them to cities, and the engineers who run the cities are like, we want to see more research, or we're just not sure yet. And it's not the science, it's the taboo, it's the fear of the public backlash. So I'd love for culture makers like us, I think that's how we're tilling the soil, really, to create more and more people who are like, there is an understanding that this is useful, it's necessary. I think the camper life has created a lot of that too, because it's brought compost toilets to a lot more people.
Yep.
We're seeing a change.
We had one of those people on the show too.
He had a great, it was fantastic. No smell, separates the urine from the and I think
the compo closet, right?
Yes, compo closet.
Yeah.
And his sounded great because the fact that you can go out into if you're out camping for long stretches of time, so, unlike those cassette toilets where it's 2 weeks, I think this was 3 to 4 weeks, which is
cassette
amazing.
Toilets I think are 2 to 3 days.
Or days,
Where-
sorry, yeah. Yeah, the composting
The cutty
was
was
like 2-3 weeks.
Yeah.
Or longer, depending
Yeah.
on.
And it's all changing. Again, I think this is where it's like culture is, I mean, tilling the soil is really such a great metaphor of like, how do we make the oxygen where all that densely packed ideology of like, no, we can't do that, or we shouldn't, or that's bad, or I'm afraid, into something else. Again, just reading Lena Zeldovich's book, who is also an amazing speaker about this, maybe at some point for Hey Poopy. She's writing about, biogas toilets that that are the size of a lazy boy armchair, right? Like this is all possible. The world of 100 years ago, where in New York City, people were maybe not quite 100, maybe like 1860s. This is from the historian Daniel Gerling, who's featured in our documentary Flush, and also in the book, in Lena Zeldovich's book, The Other Dark Matter. But he writes about Lodi manufacturing that used to take the city's shit onto these manure boats, where they were sent upstate and fired into manure bricks and then brought back down to the city as fresh produce for people to eat.
Wow.
Right? Like, we can control a nutrient loop cycle in lots of different ways. It may require some creativity. We have a CSA, right? Like I had one in Brooklyn, and I long for the CSA where C stands for caca, I guess. I don't know. I got to work on that. No, often I think about this with urine recycling, which is another easy pathway because it doesn't involve the pee and it has the bulk of the nitrogen and phosphorus. And that's a research that Sweden has been doing for a long time. Here in the US, the Rich Earth Institute in Vermont, folks at University of Michigan in Buffalo, lots of places in the university setting. There's a lot of great interest. And even I understand in New York, because if we can deal with the urine, we prevent those huge nitrogen loads from needing to be dealt with very expensive advanced technologies at the wastewater level, and prevent them from going out into waterways.
Completely.
I feel like with your going back to your childhood shame and how we have had so many guests on the show, especially Chelsea Wald, who you were talking about. Yeah. There's this point where we, as I call us public poopers, we like to talk about poop in public, that we also become born again poopers. And you have totally become a born again pooper to this the message of poop, like if it's the message of God,
risen up from the flames of the compost toilet.
Exactly.
The Punix.
I mean, so that especially meeting a lot of public poopers out there, like this is something that comes from shame, but then once all of a sudden you're like, wait, why am I shameful about this? And educating.
Yeah, I think it's very true. And I would say, having had other shameful incidences in my life, and I go back to your story again, Dave, like the ability, I remember the feelings I had trying to share those, what I thought were deep, shameful secrets with someone for the first time, and having them say like, oh, okay, well that's okay. I still love you, and thank you for telling me. And, in the poo metaphor, I give of like the shit in our lives, right? We have that relationship or whatever. And it's like, again, when we ignore that shit, and it was my childhood in a way that taught me this, because I think I was pooping my pants and I was hiding that fact, and I was also holding it in, right? It's a complicated cycle called encopresis, where the withholding, not going to the toilet when you need to creates constipation, and then you're both constipated. Maybe you've talked about this on the podcast. I haven't listened to all 197,000 episodes. And then you have wet stool that's creeping out around the side. So you're both constipated and pooping yourself at the same time, which is really just a magical human tension of miraculous embodiment.
And it reminds me on your book about you talking about, which I never knew, how many dictators were constipated. I mean, like that in itself should be something that we're taught in history, and how that shame and that anger will, like, holding your shit in will make you a miserable person.
Yeah. There's also a lovely passage, not to like toot my own horn, so to speak, but about
it up.
Thank you. Looking at your anus, which is something I'd first heard about from Jack Moran's book, Anal Pleasure and Health, and just creating a more loving relationship to your anus. But again, I clock this all in the realm of like,
I love that part in your book
about
looking at your butthole. I have a note about it. It reminds me of those like parties where women look at their vulvas for the first time, you know? And I was like thinking that Dave and I need to have some kind of interactive, like a booth where people can be like, are you ready? And let's just turn on the lights and have a mirror there so you can look at your butthole, but do it in like a privacy booth so they can just get, you know, like get in there. It's okay.
A viewing party.
Yes.
Yeah.
I have a fantasy for a project called the Real Body Library. And the idea of this is that it's people can submit pictures of real body parts, and then they can be categorized so you can look up something that's very specific, but also something very broad. And it's about both articulating that, you know, our similarities and our differences. You could look at the leg of someone with cerebral palsy and see like that has an enormous range, you know, as it would for women or for anyone of a particular age or any other category you could choose, you know, where we're both like, we're all so similar and we're all actually very different. And there's a lot of secrecy, not just secrecy, but the inability to simply know what do bodies look like, you know, like I love going to the beach, that kind of thing.
I mean, I go to the gynecologist once a year to make sure that my vagina is okay. Like we should check in. We go to the dentist twice a year to make sure our teeth are healthy. There are certain parts of our body we should check in with, our butthole being one of them.
Yeah. I've gone for a routine physical once at a doctor who wasn't like my own doctor, at a sort of, it's like strip mall kind of medical place I was working at a summer camp as an artist in residence, and I needed to have the physical for that. And they were coming down the checklist, you know, like, oh, your heart. Okay. Like pull down your pants and they'll hold your testes, like turn your head to the side. And then it says like anus or, you know, proctological health or something like that. And they go, how's your anus? Good. Okay, great. Right. And I thought like, I can turn my own head while holding my balls, you know, like actually what's hard for me to see is my own anus, and to know really how it's doing, to have a sense. But again, I think this trickles up to how this is a taboo in our broader society.
Completely.
One of those people I'd love to do more consultancy with is like those pelvic floor health specialists, those proctologists, those OBGYNs who need better language and to get rid of some of their own shame, so that we can really help people to feel confident to go to their doctor when they have one of those problems. There's a term in the medical community called doorknob questions, which is where like the patient, you know, they scheduled a visit and they go through things and everything seems fine. And so the doctor says, well, anything else you need? And puts their hand on the doorknob thinking it's time to go. And then they say, I'm bleeding from my anus, you know, and okay, that's why we're here. Gotcha. Yeah. You know, and so this is just to say, again, in that sense of like our bodies and the collective body are all integrated. The earth body, the body of an organ, the body of your anus, these things all mirror each other, because we're all made of the same stuff. Every body, every being in this large being is an interconnected part of the same thing. And so I think it all to me comes down to like, how do we learn a better way to be in our bodies, to be in our anuses, to be with our poop? And if we could do that, then I think we'd probably have fewer tyrants. I think we'd have a more human work schedule. I think we'd have a more human economic structure. And when I say human, I mean like a more broadly beneficial for the benefit of all beings.
Yes.
You know,
and more public toilets.
Completely.
And more, you know, everything.
Exactly. Definitely more public toilets that are open.
Yes, more public toilets.
That'd be really helpful.
One of the things that you said, a couple of things you said in your book that I really loved, I couldn't believe I didn't know this, was bidet is a word for little horse, because you straddle it like the French bidets. And I was like, how did I even told my partner, I was like, do you know what bidet is? And they were like, yeah, water. It just squirts water. And I was like, no, it means little horse. And I thought that was adorable. And then I loved the quote, digestion begins with desire and ends with your daily.
I was looking for that quote to say too. Yes, that was one of my faves. It was great.
So good.
So elegant.
It was like, yes, like how that should be the way we talk about poop, you know? Like poetry. Digestion, even it starts in the brain, and you get hungry and you salivate and you get excited about eating that food, and that how it ends with a healthy poop, you know? Yeah. Great.
Well, thank you. And, and as I think we said maybe before the recording officially began, like it's all in a cycle. So it begins and ends at the same time. I mean, that is, again, the Tao of poo. It's like what the shit is teaching us. And again, like, I think we could choose anything, anything in our society can teach us about most things, anything in the world. But poop is a special angle because it is our lowest common denominator to some extent. And because it's so quote unquote low in a sociological sense, if we lift that lowness up, if we lift the value of shit, then actually everyone's value increases, because, also shit is linked to anything that is thought of, right? Because it all begins in the brain, digestion, but the brain is the biggest sexual organ, right? Like the brain has created the world that we've manifested through our actions, our thoughts, our beings that come from that. But they also can recreate it. And that's where finding or imagining these beautiful futures, like Adrienne Marie Brown talks about in her books, Emergent Strategy. I hope I didn't just massacre her name, but Emergent Strategy is definitely the name of the book if I'm having a brain fart on that. We have to really visualize the brilliant futures that we want to see. Yeah. And that I think like it is our digestion can also be a beautiful thing. And the whole process. Oof, woof, wow. I feel like my whole brain just emptied out, like it was a big diarrhea. I don't no longer have any idea where I am. I'm not sure. There we are.
How you got there? No.
Yeah, exactly.
Well said though, but you're right though. It's one of those things where it just, your brain really controls so much. And then like the alpha omega, like how everything just kind of is connected, and especially with like poop health, I mean, although when I shit my pants on Sunday, I was definitely like, brain, you let me down. Brain, body, it's like all huge failure.
And also something in this book that I absolutely loved, because people have said to me before that the digestive tract doesn't use gravity. But I'm like, but how do it do? How do it do to make the poo? And you said the digestive system works like a worm crawl by squeezing together and then releasing in rhythmic motion. And I was like, wow, why has nobody ever said it that way? Like everybody knows what a worm looks like on the ground. And it's so funny too, like even just talking about a worm, because a worm eats dirt and shits out more dirt, and without that dirt we don't have food, and we need poop and manure to grow food. So it is the cycle of life. But just that way of you describing it like blew my mind. It was like, thank God somebody put it in a term that is so simple and almost childlike to understand.
I have a show called Innie Outie that uses a worm puppet named Wanda, who yeah, it's like complaining that she's, dirty and the kids don't like her. She's slimy and like she just eats like dirt all day and poops, and that's her whole life. But to me, again, this is some of my, you might say, Buddhist philosophy, although my lineage is Jewish and I have a lot of that wisdom and story that I think I carry with me also, my birth lineage. And, but we're basically worms with like heads with bigger brains and arms and legs. And I would go back, and this is where, Dave, I think like, it's not a failure of your brain body, in our most compassionate sense, like your body was doing what it really needed to do.
Well, yeah, that's what I was starting to say, but yeah, exactly. It's not a failure, but your brain's like, this is what needs to happen.
And it's a failure of your system. Or of not your system, I'm sorry, of the system with a capital S. And this is what's fucked, right? Like if we all know this, we live inside of this massively fucked up world. And that's exactly why that's so important for all of us to really wake up and do what we can, to advocate for the policy solutions and on our own sides of that. Because if we were just worms in soil, we would do our best to make sure that soil was as healthy and pure as possible, that had great drainage, that the air was fantastic. And essentially that's what really matters, is if we let go of our computers and we drop, Wanda the worm sings a song where she's like, you ride bicycles, you drive cars, you ride Ferris wheels and eat chocolate bars or something like that, and I just squirm and eat and poop, right? But like we're just kind of squirming our own way from here to there. What really matters is like, how are we most basic existence. You know, how are we eating? How are we breathing? How are we drinking? How are we shitting? How are we storing ourselves? And how are we living in community with others and with this broader interspecies interbeingness? So that's where, like, failure of the New York subway system for having so many toilets in the subways that were closed before COVID, that are closed during COVID when people need them more than ever. You know, a failure of our public toilet systems, a failure of our common humanity to prioritize capital over human capital and build those systems.
Oh, totally. I mean, I think people in general, just as society, we've almost built ourselves up with these things of materialism and everything, almost to forget about we still shit. It's like we still shit.
Yeah.
And it's almost like this thing, like if we do enough of this other thing, we kind of forget about, like, you know, this the basic sort of, like, we eat, we shit. And all these things are connected in the sense we could make it a better place, but, you know.
Yeah, and it's very Freudian. Freud writes in the foreword to John Bork's Scatological Rights of All Nations, basically that we pretend that we don't do this because we want to deny our animal selves. And whether you're a Freudian or not, lots of other people have basically said the same thing. And, you know, and it's again where I think, like, for us to, you know, to rise through the phoenix of the toilet bowl and be willing to openly proclaim, I'm a pooper, yes, it's true. I'm a pooper, yes, we do. You know, it's like, it actually is a revolutionary act, and it matters.
Yes.
Because it defeats that world of tension, you know, I spoke about earlier, that pretends this doesn't happen, and therefore replicates a world where we all go around pretending that I'm better than you and you're better than me because, you know, my shit doesn't stink.
Well, it opens up a space to have a dialogue where you can actually talk about things that normally you wouldn't want to talk about, and you can kind of move on and get past it, talk about other things that, you know, that are a little more important. So what
could be more important?
And talking about pooping universal, you also brought up I'm going to say this wrong because I'm so dyslexic. Defecatory justice.
Defecatory justice. Yeah.
Thank you. And I had to really go down like a Google search about that to really understand. But Sarah, Nahar, Nahar. Yeah, of course. Yes.
Thank you.
So. And I, being a cisgendered white woman, I never even I understand the trans toilet problem, but the bigger problem to the shame around poop, even just with other cultures, and how women in India, they get their periods and they have problems with pooping and going to any kind of bathroom. Yeah. And so to have that term, I'm going to say it wrong again.
The more you practice, the better it gets. Go ahead, Dave.
You got it. Defecatory. There we go.
My brain sees the word and my brain goes, no. Defecatory.
It's justice. Like a drum set. Defecatory. Yeah. It's got all the sounds, the symbol at the end, the drum at the big boom at the bottom. Yeah.
But defecatory justice seems like something that we try on this show to be as inclusive as possible, to just celebrate everybody's butthole, but to also think about that and how the justice needs to be helping people, like having more public toilets, you know?
Yeah. It goes deep. I mean, I'm so glad you brought it up. And Sarah Nahar, she's a PhD candidate at Syracuse in the University in the Department of Religion, and also I think a co-major in the environmental school at SUNY there. SUNY, that nice liquid U from acting school. And as a theologian and Mennonite and just radical, awesome mother. She's about to be a mother, and is really grounded in the acknowledgement that the right to pee and poo and to have autonomy over the way you do that, is a basic framework of justice, and that we see it playing out over in the way that indigenous peoples were colonized in this country, where they, again, this is in The Other Dark Matter, and Daniel Gerling wrote his PhD on this topic, that America, our country, sent people, the United States, to Native American populations and basically nannied the way that they toileted and told them what to do and how to do. And of course, and we see this a lot in the international development sector today and in many places, like Catherine Coleman Flowers writes about what's happening in rural communities in this country. We have 2 million people in this country who don't have access to toilets. Yeah. Some of them are unhoused. Some of them are just poor and mostly Black and have been dealing with these problems for a really long time.
I don't know if you saw 60 Minutes did a really great piece on it recently.
No, I didn't.
Yeah. And I thought I was like, yeah, I'll send it to you. We posted it on our Facebook page, but they call them straight pipes, where these poor lower income family homes, they literally just have a pipe that leave the toilet and just go into their yard.
Right. And so
it's insane.
This is a place where we need to both, particularly in the international sphere, but like there's a way to honor what we know about bacteria and then also really give communities the empowerment to choose what works best for them, to understand what's going to work for their ecological climate, for their habit. One of the conversations that I know has happened with Miss Flowers is like, compost toilet, the people in Lowndes County, Alabama, who she's been advocating for, could have compost toilets tomorrow, but they don't want them, partly because they want the aspirational flush toilet that everyone has without there being like malaria breeding mosquitoes in their yards, which they have the right to do. But again, this goes back to where like the fact that they don't is a structural racist issue. And that is why toilets and defecatory justice as a frame matters. So we see that just played out through the civil rights era, which I guess we're not still in, but we're still in. But the like primary integration of workspaces in the 50s, 60s in the spaces of trans and sexual orientation and gender nonconforming issues, in issues of elder care, so that you can have someone else who's in the toilet. I remember going to Niagara Falls, just north of Buffalo, and seeing one of the first really inclusive public toilets there. So inclusive because it had a washing station for people often who are Muslim, not always, who need to wash themselves for religious reasons after using the toilet, right? Like, how often do you see that in a public bathroom in the United States? I mean, never. And it's also part of the complication that like a really accessible, there is no accessible toilet for 100% of the global population, because the most human thing about us is our diversity, and different needs have different needs, and that'll just always be the case. So it frames this as a question of how can we imagine a world that really caters to to all of our basic necessities, and before anyone gets to make themselves rich, and greedy, that makes sure everyone on the planet, every being on the planet, has access to the dignity of their basic dignities.
Agreed. That was excellent. That was excellent.
President.
Yeah, that was excellent. I love everything you just said.
I was at a party right before the holidays, and I was talking to a real estate developer and a woman who just bought a old church that was converting it into a home. And the real estate developer was telling me how this new development they had was having such problems because there's no sewer system that goes to this piece of land. And I tried to tell him about the sneak of the system that Chelsea talked about in her book. And I was like, you could just, and the way I said it to him, it was almost like I was talking so far over his head. And I was like, you can make it work for you. That might be more expensive in beginning, but it'll be cheaper in the long run. And he was like, so like confused, because everybody knows what they know and they don't want to get further into, what is actually the future of sewer systems and stuff. Yeah. And then the woman who was converting the church, I was like, just get a composting toilet. And she was like, what? There's such a thing? And I was like, yeah. And I was like, how am I educating these people? Because a lot of people just don't know what the options are.
Yeah. I'm remembering earlier that when I talked about the urine recycling, part of the reason was like, I imagine this PSA where your farmer drops off the food to you in the box and you give them your bucket of pee, right? And that's like the fertilizer that regenerates it. And this container-based model is something that is being piloted lots of places. But again, we need these models of those brave souls who are early on the adoption loop. I mean, that's the fact, right? Is like, There is still a bigger market for food podcasts than poop podcasts because, because it still is a broader cultural taboo. And this is changing rapidly. I mean, I think in the 12 years since I started the Poop Project, the fact that I even have these Chelsea and Lena's books to mention, the fact that the Container-Based Sanitation Alliance, it didn't exist 12 years ago. Bidets weren't a thing 12 years ago, right?
World Toilet Organization's only been in the 21st century.
World Toilet Day started in 2013. I mean, I do think the Sustainable Development Goals adopted sanitation, and it wasn't initially one of the goals. It was lumped into water, but I think that was made in 2012. So it's just to say, we're really inching along at a glacially shit pace on this. But it's again, that tilling the soil, why it really matters for there to be this conversation that person, in my experience, isn't likely to go out and get a composting toilet tomorrow. But the more they see 60 Minutes, the more they see these things coming, and not in the weird news section, but in the here's just fact section, right, where this isn't treated as a topic that needs to have the weird kooky quotes around it, the more I think we'll see people adopting these technologies. But it requires us to reach those folks who are the innovators. And again, it's where I think camp and van life has really has boosted things in a way that I haven't seen as much of. And that there's a what is this? I'm making a gesture people can't see. Thing rolling down a hill and gaining momentum.
A snowball.
A snowball, thank you, of information and excitement. But I also think we need to work really hard, those of us in the poop positive community and then in the innovative space around this, to put out the positive stories, the real science and the human stories of people who can say we did it and it's working for us and we love it, because there is a lot of fear. And as soon as something makes it big, and again, there are things that are already big. The New York City has a building, the Solaris, that recycles all of its water in its site. So does Giant Stadium in San Francisco, this Rich Earth Institute and their system. These things, and in fact, I even believe that there is a building somewhere in Brooklyn where the entire building has been hooked up to a compost toilet, right? So as these new technologies come and all these things happen, these things that are off the grid and under the radar are going to come up. But we know the political and media climate we live in. And if those things aren't going to get buried, we need to really stress how the system we currently have is harmful, and is not a long-term sustainable solution. That's not to say that there aren't really amazing things about it. And again, I had a wonderful conversation with folks representing biosolids not too long ago that helped me to see biosolids, which is recycled poop from a city's sanitation system, as a better product. Because often in the eco-sanitation community, it's it can be full of lead, it can be full of pharmaceuticals, how high a grade is it? There's a lot of controversy. But the other side of that is saying well, we're not going to suddenly switch to everyone having compost toilets in an urban system anytime soon. We're at least 100 years away from that, probably, if not much longer. And so we need to embrace the system we have now, while at the same time making plans to shift to more climate resilient spaces. Right. And in acknowledging that, look upstream. Where are the wastewater treatment coalitions against advertising wet wipes as flushable, right? Or allowing them to be put out with those materials at all. That's something legislation can fix. We put thousands of chemicals.
When we had the Ohio Sewer District on, I think he educated us, and I was like, why is the wet wipes thing? And he goes, lobbyists.
Yeah.
Lobbyists.
And I'm
money.
My God, there's lobbyists for wet wipes?
Which normally that's the end all for everybody, money. There's always some kind of money thing involved at the end of that trail, which, is unfortunate. That's the thing. It's the web wipes. Most people I know that don't listen to this show are it's advertising. They think, it says it's flushable, and it's completely not. And I think,
please.
No, I was going to say, it's like the Matrix. You take the blue pill, the red pill, and you see the truth in it. And what it does, what it wreaks havoc, it's crazy.
Yeah. And it's
That was what I was going to say. We're in a big poop renaissance right now with all of us, with our podcast for 3 years, with you doing your project for 10 years, with all these other people
12.
we're connecting. 12, sorry.
Okay. I forget too. I'm like, really? Oh, I got to get out of this business.
No, but you're one of the prophets of it. Like, it's great.
Poo-Ru.
And yeah, Poo-Ru. But we are in a poop renaissance where 60 Minutes can talk about it, and maybe things will trickle down and be better.
I hope so. Honestly, it's hard to stay in the business because I haven't cracked the nut of how to make poop profitable. It's still often supported with other work, as I think a lot of folks do. So that's a shout out to listeners if you're someone who wants help with some of that poop positive messaging or a show in your home. I do my show Assume the Throne as a Zoom based piece, as well as in living rooms, and do big keynote. I do conference keynote speeches and things like that. But I think this all speaks to like, it's a nested problem within a nested problem. I mean, the idea that like government somehow doesn't have the capacity to regulate something that government winds up spending billions of dollars to pay for, is like feeding, like you're paying someone over here to enrich themselves, while then over here they're actually like our city, we're paying for it on the other side of that. Yeah. And I think this is again where
it's a lot of short-sightedness.
Yeah, I'd love to see the money put together with a coalition of environmental organizations, these wastewater treatment plants, like and some of this broader community. Again, I think because it's a nested problem within a nested problem, I'm often like, well, what is the thing to put our attention towards? Is it?
It makes me think, though, why haven't the city's sewer system sued the wet wipes? I know we had guests on the show who they didn't know about wet wipes, and they had so much damage done to their house that it cost them $50,000, and the insurance company paid for some of it. Why aren't the insurance companies suing the wet wipes? Maybe there just needs to be a big lawsuit of all these people, like insurance company being like, I don't want to pay for this anymore. Like, this is something that if the people are educated, you can use a baby wipe, especially if you have a baby, but throw it in the fucking trash. Don't throw it in the toilet. Yeah, I mean, I'm just saying maybe it is something where we all have to join forces and find some great lawyer.
Yeah, well, and again, because it all comes down to money, like find a lawyer who believes that they can make money off of the organizations with a vested interest in this. And unfortunately, those wastewater treatment plants are all strapped for cash. That's why some of these innovative technologies are becoming more interesting to them, because they don't have the money to do the advanced stuff. And look, our country has a lot of land, but for those who are on the coasts, like wastewater treatment plants are built near water, so they can pump back out their effluent, and rising sea levels are going to change a lot of that and create a lot of change, a lot of distress. We're seeing this on Cape Cod. We see the coastal dead zones all around the developed and a lot of the quote unquote less developed world as well. Again, what are we developing, right? That's the real question. What are we trying to cultivate? So, but what I do like about we all have the opportunity to both look downstream and say, like, what's coming out of my shit? But part of the wisdom of our poo is to look upstream as well, and to say, if we want to affect what's coming out, we have to affect what's going in. So if we want, and we need to do that on a systems wide level, on a community wide level, on a personal level. So I think
it's funny that you said what you have to look at what's going out because of what's coming in. It's like Dave's shitting his pants. Something went in and it wanted to come right back out.
I mean, it took a while, but eventually. It took a minute, but it did come out. Whew.
Yeah, I mean, like one other thing from your book, I loved that you suggest everybody to keep a log, to keep a notebook, to keep notes on your poop. But I wanted to know if you've ever tried the blue poop challenge.
No, I have not. Tell me more. Oh, is
Dave
this to turn your poop blue by eating the blue foods?
Yeah, blue muffin.
Yeah, well, you eat blue muffins, but you do it to time out your digestive tract. And so Dave and I ate it exactly at the same time. And then he pooped it out within 14 hours, Dave?
I think it might have been like 15 or 16, but yeah, in that range somewhere.
And he did it with less than a day, and mine took 44 hours.
Wow.
So it was like, and I pooped brown in between that. I wasn't constipated. It was just, and then I was reading articles that, I mean, besides the fact that it was fun and funny to do it, it was trying to track your digestive tract timing because of malabsorption, where Dave has less. He has malabsorption and I'm absorbing things more because it's actually staying in my small intestines more. So I want to challenge you, Shawn, to do the blue poop challenge.
I'd love to. Send me the recipe. Yeah.
I will.
Well, it's a blue dye, but yeah, it was tasty. It was good.
I think in the book I just advise people to eat corn or beets,
Oh yeah.
But it does require a little more more looking. Yeah. Thank you. I hope everyone listening too takes the challenge idea.
For sure.
Because it is a great way to, again, just get that overall sense. I'll say, lastly, as a meditation teacher, I think sometimes people, when they first start to meditate, they go like, oh, well, I didn't like that because when I meditated, my thoughts were really racing, or when I meditated, it made me sad. And I'm compelled to tell them, well, that's not the meditation, right? That's just because you took long enough to listen to what was actually going on. And in that way, just taking those moments of mindfulness. Another book I'd love to make is like 40 mindful movements. And it would be 40 ways to use your time in the bathroom as a kind of mindful pit stop to, and it is that opportunity we have, right? You're in that private space. Hopefully no one's bothering you for like at least a few minutes. You could look at your phone, but you can also just sit and really like feel what's going on in my body, and also in that mindful connection of like, how am I connected, right? Like as I look in the toilet, like where did that come from and where am I going? How am I connected to all of the systems that come around me?
I have 3 main questions I would want to ask you. 1, what is your brand of toilet paper that you like to use? And do you put it on the roll over or under?
Oh, over. In fact, I just had this conversation with my partner because he often installs it under, and I didn't want to like accuse him of anything, but I just had to say like, is this your intention or are you just not paying attention? And he said he's not paying attention, and I felt relieved because over is the only appropriate way, unless you have children or a cat, in which case I can understand putting it under. But I believe the patent, goes to show that it was intended for over usage. And I use any recycled brand. We have a bidet. So I primarily use the bidet, and then the toilet paper is just for a spot check, a little dab. Yeah.
I would honestly thought you'd be a little more flexible on the over under.
Really? Well, look, my overall vibe is like,
oh, totally.
Whatever works for you.
No, I love it. No, I was waiting for like exactly that. You're like, no, it's got to be over. I love it.
Well, you asked for me. That is my, if you tell me like,
preference,
that's my hill, like, great, power to you, but I'm just saying.
One thing, Shawn, though, that we learned in the past year, that, and talking about lobbyists, the toilet paper company also wants you to put it over because you use more paper that way.
Really?
You pull more. Yeah. So under is actually, maybe because of the patent, they were like, we'll sell more paper this way. I am also, though, an over person. I prefer it that way, but I only take a couple squares and pat dry from my bidet. So I'm just educating you to keeping your mind open.
Thank you. No, I appreciate that. I definitely don't want to make more money for toilet paper companies. So I will,
They're out there.
Keep that in mind. Believe the statistic, I don't know if this is still true, but last I had researched it, that we cut down more trees for toilet paper than for newsprint, which says a lot about the state of newspapers,
completely,
in our country. But it's I think I call it in the book an environmental inanity. And that's how
yes.
And again, this is where I'm like, I have to toe that line between whatever works for you, but also like some things are wrong. And I think that's, I'll go back to my meditation teacher training where like, it's not just sit down. If you don't have the right view, that's when you become a member of a cult, right? That's when you become somebody who believes in QAnon, right? It's like, it isn't actually just believe whatever your experience tells you. It's like, believe your experience and listen to the wisdom that is out there in the world and
True.
make sane choices.
Yeah. And when I said fuck the toilet paper companies, I'm talking about the ones who cut down trees. Bamboo, recycled, I'm all about you. So that's my hill that I'm standing on.
Stand there. Stand there, Ellen.
Yes.
You got it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Look good
So
on it.
recycled and bamboo is all for me, and I prefer others too. But
Have you tried the reusable? I don't have them myself, and I would say like now that with the bidet, my toilet paper consumption is so low, I don't fret with it. There are many small choices I fret about, and that's not one. But I know many people have enjoyed the reusable toilet paper from Etsy.
Kim from Flush. Yeah, Kim from Flush said something about reusable that I was just like, new. Okay, I'd never want to do that. And it's you have to wash it, and then all of a sudden you have all that poop in your washing machine, and it's like, do we want that bacteria floating around with our clean clothing? You know, our clothes are dirty enough as it is. So especially when somebody poops their pants, they usually throw away said pants. So
I imagine all the soap and everything would get it all out. But yeah, I'm not gonna partake in the reusable.
Yeah, I guess I wonder, like, how, wouldn't a hot wash in your washing machine, be enough? And I would probably do a load of only toilet paper in that load. It's a load, if you will. Yeah. But what if
but
folks
still
do for reusable diapers?
Is inside of your washing machine. I mean, your washing machine, you do have to wash out eventually here and there too.
And this is where we come to, why the world is challenging, is because we know what's right and we love convenience, and we have a lot of conflicting stories and conflicting, values. So it's hard to convince anyone, that that's a better way to go with this other thing. I think similarly, like, reusable diapers are great. Are they easy for parents? No. Do they use water and chlorine in the process? Yes. Is it confusing what to do with your dirty diapers? Because is it going to make your washing machine bad? Maybe. Are reusable diapers disposable diapers also a terrible thing? Like, yes, they are. But are they also wonderful for the freedom they give us to live our lives? They are. Things are complicated.
Yeah, it's a catch-22 with everything.
Catch-22, yeah.
Another question I have to ask, I want to know more about your bathroom. What do you use to help you poo?
We do have a bidet. we have two bidets. One that we bought during the pandemic that is I believe the Squatty Potty brand, that works quite well. And then a newer model that I got when I made some videos for Tushy that I've never installed because I just already had the other one installed, but that's slightly nicer. It has a little nozzle cleaner. It has the hot water, but our bathroom takes so long to get hot water to it that it's not a useful function unless you've just taken a shower or just already waited for the hot water for your face or something. So I've gotten used to the cold spray. I have a nice bamboo Squatty Potty that someone gave me as a gift years back. I used to be a percher on the toilet where I would use my bare feet and just perch onto the toilet seat, but I've become lazy, and so I don't do that anymore. And then
you squat on the seat. That's amazing.
Yeah, apparently, I mean, at least Bobby Edwards, CEO of Squatty Potty, told me when he was on our podcast, I think he was one of our first 3 guests, that he is also a percher. Particularly, I thought this was very interesting, and I've thought about this advice on public toilets, where he'll lift the seat and then squat with his shoes on the rim of the toilet seat, which is interesting, right? I mean, how many of us? Dicey.
I feel like I'd slip.
I agree. I think, like, unless you've got some handholds somewhere, I would not recommend this. But
also the splash. Woo!
I would be, I'd be concerned about that too. But it does, in some ways, beat hovering, above the seat, which I think is often a cause for people who have vaginas of spray on the toilet seat. That, like, in that instance, I'm like, you're going to hover anyway, then lift the seat and you can just, spray into the toilet. Yeah. And then soap
my last
water. My last important tactic. Mm-hmm.
And my last question for you is floor or pants? Bristol 7 coming out quick and no toilet in sight. Do you do what Dave did and poop your pants, or do you find someplace on the ground, aka the floor, to poop?
Pants. Definitely pants. I mean, I think Look, I mean, I'm an actor, so the what if questions are always good. And I can definitely imagine some circumstances, the stakes of which I might poop on the floor. Like, it's my wedding day, like, okay, floor, it is. Or this is my costume for some very important event. Like, yeah, floor it is. Or I'm outside, in which case floor, and then I'll try to dig a
outside
hole.
always is the better choice.
Yeah. Between two cars. I mean, this is both humorous, but also I believe is what a fair amount of unhoused folks wind up doing. So there's a practical tip if ever needed, while very bad for the broader public health. Yeah.
And question, has either of those ever happened to you?
I was going to say, I'm furrowing my brow because I'm just like, I hope it doesn't happen. I mean, thanks for asking. And may I and all beings, may they make it to the toilet when it is time for them to be there. And I'm sure it has. We've all sharted. And I've certainly had many shart fears, where you're like, ooh, that felt a little juicy. I'm gonna run to the bathroom and check. Now, the last time this isn't exactly your question, but when we checked in, I thought about, I have been feeling like my urination is a little urgent recently, and maybe I've got a UTI or something. Maybe I need to get my prostate checked. Like, maybe I'm not fully emptying my bladder. This is a partially hypochondriac fear, but there was a time where I had a similar issue, and I bought some adult diapers so that I could wear them to give myself some comfort, and also engaged in a sort of social experiment of like, now I've got these adult diapers, like, could I just pee anywhere? Like, could I just pee on the subway? And basically found that I couldn't, that even though maybe biologically I couldn't, back to the power of the brain. Like, I couldn't let go of my fear of what peeing on the subway would be like. But then I was home and a roommate was using the toilet and I really had to go. I had to poo, and I put on the diaper and I pooped in the diaper.
Wow.
And it was kind of amazing because it was a home safe environment. And it was, I once, and this is documented in Flush, I collected my urine for 30 days and then brought it out to Vermont to be recycled as part of the Rich Earth Institute's work. And that was profound because it showed me like what peeing in a toilet we don't often get a visceral sense of, which is that our pee is warm. Our pee changes color day by day. I mean, all these bottles, it looked like different vintages of wine. There were all these qualities of urine I hadn't really thought too much about. And similarly, pooping in the diaper, it reminded me, or taught me really, how poop is heavy, like that weight in the diaper. Like, I'm not normally wearing an automatic scale device, but I could really feel there the bulk that we talk about when we're talking about a bulky stool.
For sure, yeah.
Yeah, that's my story. I'm sticking to it. Don't ask for it again.
I think you're our very first guest who shit in a diaper and is here to tell us.
Really?
So thank you.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm honored. I mean, I'm inclined to say a Jewish blessing of first times. Here it is. Happy on him.
We've had Ziploc baggies, grocery baggies. We've had people poop and a bunch of other things,
brown paper bags,
but never a diaper.
It was handy. What can I say?
Nice.
More
handy. You had it in hand. It was great. It's perfect.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, we're going to go into this little segment called Shitty Choices, where you get two awful choices, and then we'll kind of take it from there.
Okay.
Shitty choices. So there's a bunch of them, but so you can run a marathon completely naked, or run a marathon covered in poop. Like head to toe.
Do I have to run a marathon at all?
I mean, these are the choices you get.
Yeah. Naked.
Awesome.
I'm proud of this body. I feel like that is something my adult life has given me. Yeah.
Excellent. I love authority. I love it.
Oh yeah. You don't have to ask me for my dick pics. I'll slide those into your DMs. I mean, do ask actually.
Yeah, do ask first.
Consent is nice. Consent is nice.
Sometimes a surprise is nice too. You're like, oh. Well, Ellen,
I have to really think about this one. I don't know. I think I would do covered in poop because I have parts of my body, like my boobs, that I need a sports bra to run in. I cannot let those flap around for 26 miles. I would be in so much fucking pain.
But how is the poop? I mean, I hope it's really thick, dried dung if you're expecting it to keep your breasts down.
I mean, it's
awesome.
Yeah. I mean, I'm gonna go with naked as much as I don't want to do that. I've run a marathon before, and the thought of having shit all over me that entire time, at least a naked thing, I could be like, whatever. I'll just jump into a fountain at the end. The boob thing is a issue. My friend did a naked run in Connecticut, and she just wore a sports bra on hers. That was it, and obviously sneakers. Those are the only two items.
Those are the two things I couldn't be naked with. I need
maybe some nice
shoe
medical
protection.
tape, something like that still gives you the feel of being naked, but gives you a little bit of.
Or that K-tape stuff. You just wrap it around, bound you up a little bit.
But is that truly naked?
I mean, no.
But I have fillings in my cavities. I mean, what are we going to do?
Nitpick. I mean, we're going to have our junk. Out. My junk's going to be flapping around for 26 minutes. That's not going to be comfortable.
No, thank you.
I'm interested. Go on.
Yeah, but I think I just don't want to be. I think the smell would it'd be too overpowering for me. But that's just me. So we got 2 for naked. I feel and like 1 for poop. All right.
Yeah, I feel like there are those runners out there. Like there's a woman who pooped halfway through the marathon recently, and she just got it done. So, yeah.
Runner's poop is a real thing and not an uncommon one.
Completely.
So I think, but
I'm talking head to toe, like not just like I had an accident halfway through. I mean, the gun goes off, you're already covered in it.
Well, I was going to say,
no just like you're like starting off that way.
You can't do it that way, but it could be like when I used to smoke. Sometimes those cigarettes where you pop a little bubble and they turn into menthols. You get the runner's shits halfway through the marathon. You get half naked, and now you can start the second half fully covered.
Right. You're just like half of it's going to be naked, other half's covered in shit. Okay.
Yeah. Best of both worlds.
Okay, well, I'm going to do a quick news story, and then we'll get you out of here. Here we go. All right, so this story I found on this British site, I believe, which now is escaping me. Oh, I saw the Metro.uk. But this woman is from the States, 90-day fiancé star who made 38,000 pounds a week, selling farts in a jar, hospitalized. Quote, I thought I had a stroke. So this former 90-day fiancé star, I love it, star, I'm going to put star in quotes, she was selling her farts in a jar, and then she was rushed to the hospital one night. Her name was Stephanie Matto. I hope I'm saying that right, Matto. She said she recently shed light on her unusual stream of income. So she had 260,000 followers, and from that base, she was selling her farts for about $1,000 a jar, which is crazy.
Yeah.
And at one point, the demand was so high that she was producing 50 jars worth of farts a week. A week. And she basically lived off a diet of, hold on, I have it right here. She consumed 3 protein shakes and a huge bowl of black bean soup in one day before feeling that something was not right with the pressure in her stomach that had moved up to her body. So she thought the pressure and the gas was just going towards her heart. She thought she was having a heart attack. Went to the hospital. Turns out she just had insane gas. The doctor, she didn't tell the doctor what she was doing, but she talked about her change in diet, and they were like, yeah, you should change the diet because that's going to help a lot. But she had gone to the hospital thinking she was going to die. And from what
my goodness.
Yeah, from what Stephanie has told us now, she's retired from selling farts in a jar. A relief to her family.
Everyone is relieved.
Completely.
I just retweeted this
her
article
customers.
today. Yeah, and I said something about how I think this story represents like basically everything that's kind of wrong with capitalism. You know, as you said, like reality quote unquote star can literally sell jars of farts for $1,000 a piece, and millionaires are going into outer space, and there are tons of poor people around.
Up is down, down is up. It's just insane. I mean, 50 jars a week. That's a lot. That's a lot of jars.
I do respect though her integrity. Like it shows she was really committed to this because. I mean, I'd love to know more, but I don't think you can really capture a fart in a jar in any way that anyone could. I mean, who hasn't tried to? You can?
Yeah.
So that when you open the jar, it will smell?
Yeah. I talked about it on this show before. My brother used to do it all the time to me as a kid. He would fart in Tupperware, and his school got out before mine did. And he'd fart in the Tupperware, and I'd come home from school and he'd open it up in my face, and I'd be like, "You fucking asshole."
Wow.
Yeah, you can capture them. And in that book, Fartology, there's a whole chapter about doing it in the bathtub to really contain it.
Into the jar? Mm-hmm. Sorry. I need all the details about this now. Okay, yeah, please, go ahead.
My only thought is, like, depending how far the jar has traveled, like, does it dissipate at some point? Like, you know, or if it's like in there for like a really long time. But, I mean, she made it.
You got to can it. You got to put it in a whole water bath, you know? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, if you're sealed tight, yeah, that shit will last.
Again, though, still, I'm like, firstly, how do
Shawn, give me your address. I'm going to mail you one.
I will. I can't wait for it. You know, send it regular shipping, okay?
$1,000.
Yeah. I'm impressed by her integrity of, like, firstly, not all farts are super stinky. So how do you, like, maybe she farted and you didn't get a stinker, you know? And then also, like, at $1,000 a jar, couldn't you outsource some of that to other people?
Yeah,
I mean, there are a lot of people who could be farting in jars for you.
As for all we know, she could have just had like that liquid ass spray and just done that. You know, like there's no proof, but I think it's more that like your brain telling you it's like, oh, it's coming from her. So
yeah, but
it's like the girls who sell their panties and say they put like tuna fish juice on it, and I'm like, why? Why?
I'm willing to sell my panties for $1,000 if anyone wants.
I'm willing to sell my farts for $1,000. So let's do that. Let's make that happen.
Yeah,
I will totally fart wink wink into a jar.
That's right.
I won't use like a synthetic spray or anything.
That's right. I've thought about selling out before, you know, but it's like what does it mean to sell out when what you do is this? And I think it would, and in that, to that extent, to what you said before, Ellen, like I'd love to do a children's book if that opportunity came around. But I just love to make some money doing anything, you know, in the related industry. So you want my fart jars? You got them.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. And that is the beautiful place to end this amazing interview. So, Shawn, thank you so much for being on our show. You were insightful and you're a true Poo-Ru.
Thank you.
And please tell our audience everything places that you can find you, plug whatever you got to plug, and what you're up to.
Yeah, thank you so much. Again, I mean, it's just been a joy to be on, to talk shit with people who get it, who are invested, who are interested, and also to be heard by folks who assumedly are doing all those same things. So you can always find more of me and the Poop Project at www.thepoopproject.org, and also on social media, facebook.com/The Poop Project, though we're not super active there. More active on Instagram and Twitter at @poop_project. And you can also find me at Shawn Shafner.com, SHAWNSHAFNER.com. I'm not going to spell com because I believe that you know how to spell it.
Hopefully.
Yeah.
COM for people that maybe don't know how to spell. I'll just throw it out there. COM. There you go.
And this episode is coming out, I think, 2 weeks before your book. Know your shit.
Yes. Go out and get it.
Everybody, get that book. It's hilarious, adorable. I learned so much, and I didn't think I could learn any more about poo, and you brought it, sir.
Informative, fun, and great illustrations. So
thank you so much. It's a joy. Well, peaceful, poop proud, everybody.
Thank you. And thanks for laughing and learning everything but with us.
And happy pooping, everybody, and enjoy your butthole.
For more info, go to heypoopypodcast.com or email us at heypoopypodcast@gmail.com. You can send in show ideas, guest requests. Check us out on Twitter at heypoopy, Instagram at heypoopypodcast, TikTok, heypoopypodcast, and our awesome new Facebook fan page. Go check it out at heypoopypodcast. We're also on Discord at heypoopydumps, or you can contact us at our new awesome hotline, 203-998-5579.
Hey Poopy Podcast is brought to you by Perfect for Entertainment. Produced by Dave and Ellen. Edited by Dave. Executive producer Stormy Leather. Theme song by Jordan Perlson. Hey Poopy!